Always true.
Has the United States turned against Europe? That's the question many in European capitals are asking. Washington has released a national security strategy that accuses Europe of democratic backsliding and warns of civilizational erasure because of migration, and openly celebrates the rise of far-right parties. Couple that with new tariffs, pressure on NATO, and threats of economic retaliation, and the foundation of the multilateral system that's guided the world order for 80 years suddenly looks far less stable. All this as Europe confronts a grinding war in Ukraine and a fragile ceasefire in Gaza that's divided the continent. So, in this new era of uncertainty, is Europe still a partner, a rival, or simply collateral in America's strategic plans? To explore whether the EU should follow Washington's lead, push back against it, or chart an entirely different course, Spain's Foreign Minister, José Manuel Albares, talks to Al Jazeera. José Manuel Albares, Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Spain, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. We're speaking in a year that is an important anniversary, the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, the founding of the current global order. I'd like you to take stock of that, and in particular one aspect of it, the transatlantic partnership between the US and Europe. Is it as strong as ever, or is it fraying now?
For Spain, transatlantic security, transatlantic trade, the relationship between the United States and Europe have given us the largest decades of security and prosperity, and it should continue being that way. I think we both, Americans and Europeans, we benefit from that. We need two to tango, that's for sure. And the new American administration has some new ideas about trade, about security in Europe. Spain works to keep that bond and that transatlantic security together. But at the same time, we acknowledge that it is high time that Europe makes a leap forward in sovereignty, removing all obstacles from internal market to be able to have our own prosperity and getting our security more in our hands.
You've mentioned the new ideas this administration has, and you're being diplomatic, that's your job, but there are many in Europe who are somewhat uncomfortable. A new 33-page document has come out, the new National Security Strategy. It states, our goal should be to help Europe correct its current trajectory. It says Europe is facing civilizational erasure because of migration. It claims many European governments trample on basic principles of democracy to suppress opposition. Now, do you think that's an accurate picture? Is Europe, as they say, going in the wrong direction?
Not at all, not at all. We are having the best decades in European history if you take into consideration peace, stability, freedom, pluralism, diversity. That's what European Union is about. European Union was made to avoid war among European countries. That was achieved. To create prosperity, that's achieved. Now we have a real threat in Ukraine because war has gone back to European territory. And I think that the European Union voice must be very clear and very strong at the table to make sure that Europe continues to be a prosperous and peaceful territory.
We'll talk more about Ukraine in a minute, but do you think it's right for the US to be dictating the way Europe should behave in the way they have in this document? For example, it says the US within European political systems should cultivate resistance, and it says, it goes on, the growing influence of patriotic European parties indeed gives cause for great optimism. Now, he doesn't say their names, but you know what parties Donald Trump and his administration are talking about. They're talking about reform in the UK, they're talking about AFD, they're talking about Vox in your country, Spain, aren't they?
There are two things. One is, there is a principle. It's that each country that has a democratic system must decide peacefully and calm among their own citizens who will be running the next 4 years of government, and everyone else must be out of that. We very much respect the democracy in any country, United States or any European country, And each one must decide, and it's the citizens of those countries with no foreign interference at all that must take those decisions. Certainly, the Spanish government will make sure that when it comes to our elections, they will be held peacefully, calmly, and without no interference from anyone else, and that all Spanish political parties will be able to run without foreign interference. When it comes to the extreme right-wing parties, they are a real threat to European Union because they go against European Union values. And European Union's values, democracy, diversity, tolerance, peace, those are not just wonderful ideas that are in the sky. They are the real bottom, the engines that move forward the prosperity, the stability, and the peace of Europe. Without those values, European Union will fall apart, and that will go against the stability and the prosperity of our citizens. Extreme right-wing parties, even if they call themselves patriotic, they go against the interest of our citizens. To be a real patriot today in any European countries, it's also to be in favor of European Union, being also a European patriot.
You talk about those key European values. Are there shared values now with the United States? Because if you look at recent national security strategies, that the US comes up with these every few years, every administration has one, they talked about freedom and democracy. Now those aren't the priorities anymore. The priority number one, absolutely the worst ill in the world, according to this strategy, is fighting migration. And the other key thing seems to be chasing profits. Do you have shared values with the US, or is there a mismatch now?
The NATO alliance, for instance, is a NATO around values, around democracy, around free trade, and we want it to continue being that way. I cannot judge the place of the American people. They have chosen their government, and their government, therefore, it's a democratically elected government, has the right to take the decision on behalf of the United States that they consider the best for their citizen. The same right, exactly the same right we have the European governments. And in Spain, our government takes a clear stance in favor of freedom, of democracy, of pluralism, and diversity. And when you look to migration, for instance, and you see how our government, the Pedro Sanchez government, has been curbing irregular migration that goes to Europe through Spain, you realize that our system is very successful. And our system is telling the people the truth, telling them that irregular migration is a very small percentage of global migration. Most migrants get to Europe legally. A very small part gets there illegally. And it's wrong to tell them that irregular migration and criminality is the same thing. They are not the same thing. If we have the rate of growth that we have today in Spain and in the rest of Europe, it's also thanks to all those migrants that come to live and to work with us. And in order to be able to manage this global phenomenon of migration, and as long as the difference, economic difference between Africa and Europe will remain where it is, we need to cooperate with the countries of Africa, to have a high-level political dialogue, to be really, really tough on those mafias that do human trafficking and that put the people's life at risk in the Mediterranean and in the Atlantic. But because any migrant, including irregular migrants, they have a dignity and they have human rights, and we have to help those countries to develop. That's why Spain has multiplied by 3 the development cooperation programs. All that is successful. Spain proves it. And it's totally compatible with democracy, with economic growth, and with the respect of human rights.
The thing that is at the centerpiece of the transatlantic alliance, you've already mentioned it, is NATO. How committed do you think the US is going forward to NATO?
That's a question for the government of the United States. What I hope...
But you must be trying to work it out. It's quite important for you to know.
What I hope is that that bond will remain. It has guaranteed transatlantic security for decades, and I hope that it will continue doing it so. At any rate, Spain is a very committed ally to NATO, and we have a historical deployment of soldiers, aeroplanes in the eastern flank, more than 2,000 soldiers, and our aeroplanes are guaranteeing the security of the Baltic states, for instance.
There are reports that the United States wants Europe to take over the majority of NATO's conventional defence capabilities by 2027. One, is that true? And two, if that is something that's being discussed, is that in any way a viable timeline? It's only 2 years.
Well, we had a few days ago in Brussels a NATO ministers of foreign affairs. We met and there were no discussions on that. There were a lot of discussions about transatlantic security, and we were all together with the same aim, to bring peace to Europe.
And in that meeting, you were there, but the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio wasn't. He sent his deputy. The US have been telling you to step up in terms of your own capabilities, but I'm told he had a little bit of a lecture for the rest of you and said that you should be buying American and not going to European defence contractors. Is that correct, and does that seem right?
I think that Europe must step up, not because someone else tells you or doesn't tell you. It's because it's the best for our citizens. We are an economic power. We are a regulatory power. We have to have a strong external voice as well. And step up means removing all obstacles that are still there from the internal market to make sure that our economy expands and gives all the prosperity that it can to our citizens, better integrated our defense industries to make sure that we produce everything we need for deterrence and for our own security, and making movements even towards a European army. Spain has been advocated for that for a long time. As we said, that should be a very strong pillar, European pillar of NATO. But if someone thinks that we should take all our security in our hands, we will be ready to do that as well.
But of course, all of this costs money. At the NATO summit in The Hague earlier in the year, back in June, NATO allies agreed to spend 5% of their GDP on defence. There was, out of 32 countries, only one odd one out, and that was Spain. President Trump's not happy. He says Spain is not a team player, and in that national security strategy I mentioned, again, he says this Hague commitment, as they call it, it must be met. What is Spain's answer to that, and are you worried that the US now may target you because of your limited spending?
Spain is a reliable and indispensable ally within NATO. We are going to meet all the capacities that are being requested by NATO. And we have calculated that we can meet all those capacities with 2.1% of our GDP.
Minister, there has to be a metric to prove that everyone is doing their fair share. And the metric is a financial metric that has been set by NATO of 5% of GDP. And it's a consensus organisation. You are the only one that's not abiding by the consensus.
But the important is not the percentage that you spend, are you delivering the capacities that you are requested? We are, and we are going to continue doing it. We are indispensable. We are indispensable because of the deployment in the eastern flank. We are indispensable because we are a key partner in the south to meet the southern threat. We are indispensable because there are 2 joint military bases in Spain that guarantee the transatlantic security. For many reasons, Spain is really one of the most important countries in transatlantic security.
Of course, the reason that Europe needs to spend more is because of the situation in Ukraine. We've had a lot of diplomacy in recent days and negotiations. We had this 28-point plan that came up at one point, which we were told was a US proposal, then it was a joint US-Russian proposal, and then it was renegotiated after pressure in Europe. But given all that, are you concerned that the US may force President Zelensky into a bad deal?
For us, this is something that is unthinkable. Nothing can be decided about Ukraine without President Zelensky being at the heart of that decision.
But he's not been in the heart of some of these discussions.
We are talking about a sovereign country and a democratically elected president. And another very important thing to understand why so existential, Ukraine. In this war of aggression, there is at stake the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ukraine. It's already huge. But there is also the security of Europe. The security of Europe is interlinked with whatever happens in Ukraine. And whatever peace deal or treaty will come out of this war of aggression will shape the future of European security and world security. If a war of aggression has a reward, the world will be more unstable tomorrow. All of us will go to sleep thinking that maybe tomorrow one of your powerful neighbors can want a part of your sovereignty or your territory by force. We thought that with the United Nations and United Nations Charter, this was avoided. War was avoided to settle dispute among states. War was not anymore a tool of foreign policy. What is at stake is if that is going back or not. Spain will help and will back Ukraine as long as it takes for its own sovereignty, the sovereignty of Ukraine, and also to guarantee that the security of Europe and world order will remain within the boundaries of the United Nations Charter.
Do you think a diplomatic settlement is possible? We've had all these discussions about possible deals, but if you actually look closely, President Putin's never changed his position. He says that, yes, he'll do a deal, but he wants even more of Ukraine than he's already conquered. So is a deal in any way likely?
It would be very easy to end this war. Ukrainians didn't want this war. The United States didn't want this war. Europeans, the Spanish government, we didn't want this war. It would only take to the Russian government to tell their soldiers to go back within the boundaries of the Russian Federation. It's everything.
Can you see that happening?
We are going to back Ukraine to try to make that happen.
Okay, you're going to back Ukraine. How are you going to do that? Funding Ukraine's war effort. As I understand it, the current plan is to get the frozen Russian assets, 210 billion euros, that's $240 billion, and use that money. But there's a problem. The money is held in Belgium, and Belgium doesn't like this idea because it thinks there could be a legal challenge and it will be on the hook for the money. Are you going to be able to solve this?
I'm sure that we will manage. In Europe, we are 27 countries, 27 democracies, and therefore we have different point of view, not on the end of the subject. We all want peace. We all want a democratic, free and sovereign Ukraine to get out of this war. We have sometimes different point of view on how to manage. Spain strongly feels that we should use those frozen assets. At the end of the war, there will be reparations to pay from Russia to Ukraine. This could be an advancement of those reparations. At any rate, we are not waiting for those frozen assets to move forward. Europeans altogether, European Union and European countries, we are giving more than 60% of all aid, military aid and economic aid to Ukraine today. President Zelensky was 2 weeks ago in Madrid and we gave him a new package of 800 million euros. So we are going to continue backing Ukraine.
Let me turn to another conflict in the situation in Gaza. It was in October that it was heralded from the White House. There was this Trump peace plan, a 20-point plan. We have had a very shaky ceasefire, and in fact, Israel has attacked every single day since. Palestinians are still dying, just at a rate that's not as great as it was before. Apparently, the Trump administration are coming up with a phase 2 they're going to announce soon. But are you worried about the situation and that everything now could unravel again?
Of course I'm worried. There is a ceasefire. Therefore, there is a glimpse of hope for the Palestinian people and for everyone, including the Israeli people that have also a right to their own security. But this permanent violation of the ceasefire worries me a lot. So the next step that we have to do is to consolidate this ceasefire and to make sure that both the UN, when it comes to the delivering of humanitarian aid, and the Palestinian Authority, when it comes to how will be run in the future Gaza, go into the heart of any solution. Spain is ready to help, but we have to do it. And we have very simple things, such as delivering justice, delivering water and food, training on our future police in Gaza to guarantee the security both of the people in Gaza and also the security of Israel, to make sure that they will not get any more terrorist attacks like this horrible terrorist attack of October 7th. All those things must be already in the hand of one Palestinian Authority. Let's not duplicate. If United Nations, if UNRWA, if the Palestinian Authority are already doing those things well, let's not duplicate it.
So you don't need a peace board headed by President Trump?
The Palestinian must be at the heart of everything, because at the end of the day, there is only one solution, the two-state solution. And the two-state solution means one Palestinian state that will be real and viable, the West Bank and Gaza connected by a corridor under one single Palestinian Authority, with an exit to the sea and a port in Gaza and its capital in East Jerusalem, living in good neighborhood with the state of Israel, that will have its relationship normalized with the rest of the countries in the Middle East. We all know, Israelis and Palestinians knows it because they have negotiated many times in history, that that's the real recipe for peace and for stability. Let's go once and for all for that solution.
And what about accountability for all those who've died in Gaza? Over 70,000 people. We know that's not the real number. We know that it's bigger, that probably the number of women and children is 70,000, given how many of the dead have been uncounted. You have the International Court of Justice, the case brought by South Africa, but we know that that operates in a glacially slow manner. And then we have the International Criminal Court. Yes, it's got proceedings, it's got arrest warrants, but the US has got sanctions on the courts and its officials. Will there ever be justice?
Spain is part of both the ICJ case, and also we are giving voluntary contribution to the ICC to carry out its work. It should work. ICJ's ruling are binding for all countries in the planet, including Israel. It's a body that is in the United Nations Charter since the very beginning, and their rulings are binding also for Israel. So it should be enough. There is a humanitarian catastrophe that has been going on in Gaza, and the Palestinians needs, and the humanity needs, that justice will be made. The same principles, exactly the same principles that we acknowledge in Ukraine, we acknowledge them also in Gaza. International law, it's only one, whether it's in Ukraine or in Gaza. International humanitarian law that says that it's forbidden to take like military targets, the civilian or hospitals, on the places of prayer, that's true in Kiev or in Gaza, and Spain backs this.
Some other European countries, though, do not follow Spain's strong line on this. We saw something in recent days which seems very trivial, the Eurovision Song Contest, and in that Israel will be allowed to take part again next year. 4 countries, Spain is one of them, are now boycotting the contest. I mean, that seems very trivial. Doesn't Europe need to be taking much, much tougher action?
There are concepts such as human rights, peace, international law, United Nations Charter, that once again, I say, those are the children of Europe. We were the first one to uphold those principles.
But do they mean anything? Do they mean anything anymore?
We have to do it today. It's the way that world should go. And Israel, if they want to relate normally to European Union, they cannot go like this in Gaza. European Union can have business as usual relations with countries that believe in peace, in the respect of human rights. That's what we want for everyone on earth. And if the Europeans we don't raise up very high that flag, no one else in the world is going to do it.
But there are lots of countries that are ignoring those laws, that believe might is right. Let me take you to another part of the world. Let me take you to the coasts of Venezuela, where the US, since September, has been involved in numerous attacks on boats it says are carrying drugs. But we've got no proof of that. The US is acting as the jury, the judge, and the executioner. That's a breach of international law, is it not?
We take very seriously all this struggle against drug smugglers. But of course, we do it with civilian means and through the police. And when it comes to Venezuela, the people of Venezuela, they have a relationship of brotherhood with the Spanish people, as all the other people in Latin America. What we want for their crisis is a genuinely Venezuelan solution through peaceful means, through dialogue, inter-Venezuelan dialogue, and of course, that at the end of the day, we find a peaceful and democratic Venezuela. Spain is going to be there to help that.
But not a forced regime change. Do you think that's what the US now is trying to achieve?
We want a peaceful solution for the Venezuelan crisis.
Multilateralism, you've mentioned several times, 80 years on, it's where we started this interview. I mean, is it still there? Is the UN still there? I know they're physically still there, but countries around the world are ignoring them. And when one country does it, it gives space for other countries to do it. And slowly, the system collapses, does it not?
When you are in places like Doha, in this Doha forum, you realize, and as a Spanish foreign minister, I realize international meeting after international meeting, that we are many more that continue to believe that cooperation is much stronger than confrontation, and that the UN remains valid because no country in the world can tackle alone global issues.
I want to ask you about diplomacy, because in the age of Trump, and his name has come up numerous times in this interview, does diplomacy in a traditional way still exist? It used to be diplomats arranging meetings before the leaders met. Now we see the leaders, sometimes in the Oval Office, having their negotiations in public. We see President Trump surprising his allies by making announcements on Twitter. Is traditional diplomacy dead?
Not at all, but it's transforming. Of course, you have new means of communication, you have social networks, you have also parallel vehicles. Qatar is very good at that, for instance, mediation, that are completely valid. But traditional diplomacy remains important. At the end of the day, states, government meet in UN to take very strong decisions, to make international agreements, to take decisions that they will implement at a national scale to advance multilaterally and therefore globally.
Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Albares, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.
A great pleasure.